The diplomatic station hung like a crystalline droplet against the infinite darkness of space, its transparent dome reflecting the distant starlight. Inside, tension crackled more intensely than the station's environmental stabilizers. Lyra Casey stood at the center of the primary negotiation chamber, her midnight blue skin shimmering under the soft illumination. Unlike the typical representation of imperial leadership, she was neither grotesque nor overtly intimidating. Instead, her presence was a calculated symphony of power and precision. Her lithe frame, draped in a simple gray bodysuit with intricate silver threading, spoke of military discipline rather than ornate decoration. Her luminous amber eyes, a rare genetic trait among her people, scanned the room with predatory awareness. The Solarian Dominion had not achieved galactic prominence through diplomacy alone. Generations of strategic conquest and ruthless political maneuvering had carved their empire across multiple star systems. The human delegation's arrival was nothing more than a formality. Lyra had already reviewed countless reports, strategic analyses, and intercepted communications. Humans were young, chaotic, unpredictable, a species barely emerging from their own planetary conflicts. Their request for diplomatic relations with the Solarian Dominion was transparently an attempt to gain technological and strategic advantages. The chamber's massive doors parted with a subtle hydraulic whisper, and then he entered. Rowan Voran was not what she expected. Unlike the typical human diplomatic corps, often nervous, overly formal, or desperately attempting to appear important, Rowan moved with a fluid grace that suggested military training. His dark skin had a warmth that seemed to absorb and reflect light differently from the station's sterile environment. A simple charcoal-gray diplomatic uniform fitted him like a second skin, revealing an athletic build that spoke of physical capability beyond bureaucratic expectations. Well, their eyes met. Lyra had anticipated many scenarios: trembling subservience, aggressive posturing, obsequious flattery. What she encountered was neither and everything in between. Rowan's gaze was direct, calm, devoid of the typical human tells of anxiety or aggression. He didn't bow. He didn't attempt to establish dominance. He simply existed, completely present, completely confident. Empress Lyra Casey, he spoke, his voice a measured baritone that seemed to resonate with the chamber's acoustic design. I'm Rowan Voran, lead diplomatic envoy from the United Terran Consortium. A standard greeting, yet something in its delivery felt different. Her senior diplomatic advisor, Krell Namath, shifted uncomfortably beside her. His scaled appendages, a mark of his subspecies, trembled slightly, a sign of deep unease. Empress, he whispered, the human appears unusual. Lyra's slight hand gesture silenced him immediately. Mr. Voran, she responded, her own voice a carefully modulated instrument of power and control, your journey has been long. I trust the transit protocols were satisfactory. Rowan's lips curved, not quite a smile, but something more nuanced, a hint of genuine amusement that didn't reach the level of mockery. Efficient, he replied. Your transit guidelines are impressively detailed. It was a simple word. Yet in that moment, Lyra felt something she had not experienced in standard diplomatic encounters: genuine intellectual respect. The preliminary discussion proceeded with a rhythm that surprised everyone present. Rowan demonstrated a comprehensive understanding of Solarian territorial disputes, economic constraints, and even subtle cultural nuances that most human diplomats would have missed entirely. He wasn't just reading from prepared notes. He was engaging, truly engaging, with the complex geopolitical landscape of their interaction. As the initial session concluded, Lyra found herself experiencing an unfamiliar sensation. Not attraction, that would be primitive and unprofessional, but intrigue. A genuine, intellectual curiosity about this human who refused to be categorized or dismissed. Rowan Voran was going to be interesting. And in the Solarian Dominion, interesting was a dangerous classification indeed. The diplomatic quarters assigned to Rowan Vorin were Spartan by Solarian standards, a deliberate design that spoke volumes about the Empire's approach to hospitality. Minimalist geometric panels in muted silver tones lined the walls, with data interfaces seamlessly integrated into what appeared to be solid surfaces. Rowan sat at the compact workstation, his fingers dancing across a holographic display that projected complex star charts and diplomatic communiques. Behind him, a small personal terminal blinked with an incoming secure transmission. His communication officer, Lyra Tench, appeared in a subdued holographic projection. Her expression was a mixture of concern and professional restraint. "The consortium is getting impatient," she said, her voice low and controlled. "Your negotiations with Empress Casey are taking longer than anticipated. Some council members are questioning your approach." Rowan's response was measured. "Diplomatic relations with the Solarian Dominion can't be rushed. We're dealing with a civilization that's conquered and integrated over 63 distinct star systems. Subtlety matters." What he didn't say, what he couldn't say, was how thoroughly Lyra Case had begun to fascinate him. Their subsequent negotiation sessions had revealed layers of complexity he hadn't initially anticipated. The Solarian Dominion wasn't just a military machine. It was an intricate social organism with protocols that ran deeper than simple conquest. Lyra herself was an enigma. During their third formal discussion, she had unexpectedly diverted from standard diplomatic discourse to discuss the intricate ecosystem of her home world's primary moon. Her knowledge wasn't just academic, it was deeply personal, revealing a side of imperial leadership that contradicted every report and intelligence briefing Rowan had studied. "The glacial formations on Solaria Prime's third moon," she had explained, her amber eyes momentarily soft with what seemed like genuine fondness. "They're not just geological structures. They're living memory banks of our civilization's earliest migrations." It was a moment of vulnerability he hadn't expected from a ruler known for her ruthless strategic calculations. The transmission from Lyra concluded, leaving Rowan alone with his thoughts. A subtle chime indicated another incoming communication, this time directly from the Imperial communication channels. An encrypted message from Lyra herself. The communication was brief, almost cryptic. "Diplomatic reception, outer observation deck, 2 planetary rotations from now, formal attire required." No explanation, no elaboration, just a summons. Rowan understood this was more than a simple diplomatic invitation. It was a test. When the designated time arrived, he found himself standing on the observation deck, a massive transparent platform that seemed to float among the stars. The station's artificial gravity and environmental controls created an illusion of weightlessness, with star systems spinning in breathtaking panoramas beyond the transparent membrane. Lyra arrived precisely 3 standard minutes after the designated time. Her attire was a departure from her previous formal diplomatic wear. A deep midnight blue ensemble that seemed to shimmer and change with every movement, embedded with what appeared to be bioluminescent threading that responded to her body's temperature and emotional state. "Mr. Vorin," she greeted, her voice carrying a tone that was neither fully professional nor entirely personal. "I trust you're finding our diplomatic facilities satisfactory." Rowan recognized the conversational gambit for what it was, a carefully constructed probe, designed to reveal something about his character. "Satisfactory isn't the word I'd choose," he responded, matching her measured tone. "Fascinating might be more accurate." A flicker of something surprise, amusement, passed across her features. Their conversation that evening would be recorded in neither official diplomatic transcripts nor personal logs. It would become something far more dangerous. A genuine connection. The quantum communication array hummed with suppressed tension, its intricate holographic displays casting ghostly shadows across the briefing chamber. Krell Namath's scaled fingers trembled as he projected the latest intelligence reports, each projection more disturbing than the last. Empress, he began, his voice a controlled whisper of barely contained panic. The border conflicts in the Meridian Quadrant have escalated beyond our initial projections. Lyra Casey stood motionless, her midnight blue skin seemingly absorbing the light around her. The diplomatic reception with Rowan Voren now felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by the imminent threat of systemic collapse. 3 independent colony systems had gone dark in the past solar cycle. Communication blackouts were not uncommon in the vast expanse of the Solarian Dominion, but the pattern of these interruptions suggested something far more sinister. "Show me the detailed transmission logs," Lyra commanded. The holographic display shifted, revealing a complex web of communication interruptions. Each broken line represented a lost connection, a potential breach in the Empire's intricate defensive network. Rowan Voren would be arriving for their next diplomatic session in less than 6 standard hours, and Lyra knew their discussions would now be fundamentally altered. Across the diplomatic station, in his assigned quarters, Rowan was experiencing his own moment of revelation. Lyra Tench's encrypted transmission had arrived with unprecedented urgency. "We've intercepted communications suggesting a massive destabilization event," Lyra's holographic projection warned. "The Solarian border regions are showing signs of coordinated insurgent activity. Something big is coming." Rowan's military training surfaced immediately. The diplomatic mission was no longer just a political negotiation. It had become a potential prevention of full-scale conflict. When they met in the primary negotiation chamber, the air itself seemed charged with unspoken tensions. Lyra spoke first. "Mr. Voren, our previous conversations seem almost trivial in light of current developments." Rowan noted the subtle shift in her communication. No longer was she the distant imperial ruler. Now she was a strategic leader facing an existential threat. "The Meridian Quadrant disruptions," he stated, not a question but an observation. "Your intelligence suggests more than a simple border skirmish." A flicker of surprise crossed Lyra's features. The human had pieced together the complexity of the situation faster than most of her own high-ranking advisors. "We believe there's a coordinated effort to destabilize the outer colonies," Lyra revealed, her amber eyes locked with Rowan's. "But the source remains frustratingly opaque." What happened next would become a pivotal moment in interspecies diplomatic history. Rowan reached into a secure data compartment, extracting a crystalline data storage device. "Our deep space monitoring networks have been tracking unusual quantum signature disruptions. I believe these might provide some context to your border incidents." The gesture was unprecedented. Sharing classified intelligence was not standard diplomatic protocol, especially between species with a history of minimal direct interaction. Krell Namath, standing nearby, could barely contain his shock. A human offering strategic intelligence to the Solarian Dominion, unthinkable. As the data unfolded, a complex narrative emerged. The border disruptions were not random. They were a calculated attempt to exploit vulnerabilities in the Solarian defensive network, vulnerabilities that neither the Solarian intelligence nor their human counterparts had fully recognized until this moment. Their eyes met, not as representatives of competing species, but as strategic minds confronting a shared threat. The diplomatic mission had just transformed into something far more critical. The isolation chamber was a study in sterile precision. Molecular filtration systems hummed quietly, creating a microenvironment completely detached from the diplomatic station's primary systems. Here, even the most sensitive communications could be discussed without fear of external interference. Rowan Voran stood motionless, his fingers tracing the holographic display that contained the most recent intelligence gathered from the Meridian Quadrant disruptions. Something was fundamentally wrong with the data, a pattern that defied both Solarian and human analytical models. A secure communication channel flickered to life. Lyra Tench's projection appeared, her usual composed demeanor replaced by visible tension. "The consortium is demanding immediate withdrawal," she said, her voice low and urgent. "Your collaborative approach with Empress Casey has been deemed problematic." Rowan understood the subtext. Collaboration was one thing, what he and Lyra were developing was something entirely different. Across the station, in her private strategic command center, Lyra faced her own moment of reckoning. Krell Namath stood rigid, presenting a holographic reconstruction of their recent intelligence sharing. "Empress," he began, his scaled features betraying deep concern, "your interactions with the human diplomat exceed all established diplomatic protocols. The High Council is preparing an formal inquiry." Lyra's amber eyes narrowed. An inquiry or a challenge to my leadership? The distinction was critical. In the Solarian Dominion, political challenges were rarely mere bureaucratic formalities. They were potential preludes to systemic restructuring or outright elimination. The threat came unexpectedly. A quantum-encrypted transmission breached their most secure communication networks. The source was impossible to trace, a ghost in the most sophisticated communication system in the known galaxy. The message was brutally direct. Cease collaborative investigations. Immediate termination of human diplomatic mission recommended. Consequences of noncompliance will be catastrophic. Rowan was the first to discover the transmission's broader implications. The disruptions in the Meridian Quadrant were not simply border conflicts. They were a calculated attempt to create a power vacuum, and someone was orchestrating it with surgical precision. When Lyra and Rowan reconvened in their now familiar diplomatic chamber, the air was thick with unspoken tensions. "We're being manipulated," Rowan said, his voice a controlled blend of professional assessment and personal conviction. Lyra's response was immediate. "Whoever is behind these disruptions wants to create conflict between the Solarian Dominion and the human consortium." Their eyes met. The connection was more than diplomatic, more than strategic. Something fundamental had shifted between them. But trust, true trust, remained fragile. A secondary communication arrived, this one from the human consortium's highest-ranking strategic council. The message was unequivocal. Rowan was to terminate his diplomatic mission and return immediately. The choice was becoming clear: follow established protocols or pursue the truth. Rowan looked at Lyra, she looked back. No words were necessary. In that moment, they both understood that the real conflict was just beginning. The quantum resonance chamber was not designed for human occupation. Its crystalline walls pulsed with an otherworldly luminescence, creating an environment that challenged the very perception of space and time. Rowan Voran stood beside Lyra Casey, their hands nearly touching, but not quite, as they interfaced with the most advanced intelligence gathering system in the known galaxy. The device was a Solarian creation, a technological marvel that could trace quantum entanglement patterns across vast distances of space. They had made their choice. Against the explicit orders of both the Human Consortium and the Solarian High Council, they had committed to uncovering the truth behind the Meridian Quadrant disruptions. What they discovered was far more terrifying than anyone could have imagined. The threat was not external, it was systemic. The quantum signatures match, Lyra said, her voice a controlled whisper. Her midnight blue skin seemed to absorb the chamber's ethereal light. Someone has been manipulating communication networks across multiple star systems. Rowan's fingers danced across the holographic interface, revealing a complex web of interconnected disruptions. Not just communication, he corrected. Resource allocation, trade routes, military deployments. The pattern was deliberate, methodical, designed to create friction between emerging galactic powers, specifically between the Solarian Dominion and the Human Consortium. Their investigation had cost them everything. Rowan had been officially stripped of his diplomatic credentials. A formal declaration of persona non grata now followed him across every human-controlled communication network. His career, his entire professional identity, had been systematically dismantled. Lyra faced an even more dire consequence. The Solarian High Council had initiated a rare political procedure that would effectively remove her from imperial leadership. Her decades of strategic brilliance, her careful navigation of complex galactic politics, all of it was being systematically erased. Yet they continued. The quantum resonance chamber hummed with increasing intensity. Something was emerging from the data, a pattern that defied conventional understanding. There, Rowan pointed, a subtle quantum signature that didn't match any known galactic communication protocol. Lyra's amber eyes narrowed. It's a bridge, she whispered. Not a communication network, a manipulation system. They were close to something profound, a discovery that could reshape understanding of galactic political dynamics. But discoveries come with a price. The chamber's defensive systems suddenly activated. External threats were converging, multiple quantum signatures indicating incoming strategic intervention units from both the Solarian Dominion and the Human Consortium. They had minutes, perhaps less. Rowan turned to Lyra. In that moment, something passed between them that transcended diplomatic protocols, species differences, or political boundaries. Understanding. We have one chance, he said. Lyra's response was immediate. A quantum encryption sequence that would transmit their findings to multiple independent monitoring stations across different star systems. If they failed, the truth would survive. The first wave of intervention units breached the chamber's outer defenses. Rowan's hand found Lyra's, not a romantic gesture, a strategic one, a moment of absolute unity. As the chamber began to destabilize, they activated the final quantum transmission. The truth would not be silenced.